On this, the Halloween edition of Raspberry Fields Forever, we take a look at one of the most iconic horror films of all time, Friday the 13th. There may not be a hockey mask, but there is a young, hot Kevin Bacon.
Oh, let's pick these berries.
Join us on a journey as we frolic through fields of filmmaking follies. Join us on this week's episode of Raspberry Fields Forever.
You suck. What's up, everyone? Jesse Rodden here with the Halloween edition of Raspberry Fields Forever. Welcome, everyone. Happy Halloween to you. I'm with my co-host, as always, Mr. Kieran Gibbs. Kieran, how you doing there, buddy?
I am okay. I have in my hand, for those who are listening, a Dream World limited edition Coca-Cola, zero sugar, because I am what I like to call a diet soda aficionado, because I do consume a lot of diet sodas and I do not like the term recovering alcoholic. So,
okay, so you're just going to keep that on hand for the remainder of the episode. We're just going to hear just like random gulps throughout. Is that how it's going to happen?
Gulps and belches, my friend. Gulps and belches.
Excellent.
How are you, though?
Man, I'm doing good. Working on our next project. I know that me and you both have been working on our next project. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on and stuff, because that comes with the plugs, not drugs portion of the episode. But big things are happening, so I'm excited about that. And I actually enjoyed the movie that we watched this week. Again, this is the second time that we've come across a movie that, honestly, I don't know how it made this list. This and The Nude Bomb. Like, I think both of them are great movies. And not to mention Friday the 13th kind of sparred an entire generation of slasher flicks and camp horror. I mean, this is where we got that phrase from, is camp horror. It's because of Friday the 13th. So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to talk about it today.
I am also excited to talk about it, as I did also enjoy it. But whereas I didn't actually genuinely understand why The Nude Bomb was on the Razzies Worst Of list, I can, from a snooty 70s filmmaker perspective, see where Friday the 13th might be on said list, but we will get into that. And as we said, we are going to be covering the original, the OG, the primordial, the beginning, the nexus point, the first, no gimmicks, Sean Cunningham's Friday the 13th from 1980. Jesse, initial thoughts?
Love it. This kind of sparked, like I said, an entire generation of films. I mean, how many Friday the 13th films have been made now? It's been since 1980 and we're in 2022. So, I mean, that tells you how long these movies have been around. And they've gotten better. They've also gotten worse. So, and that's another thing I guess I'm taking a perspective from, is because I've watched so many Friday the 13th movies, Kieran. I'm a big horror movie buff anyways, but I've watched so many of the Friday the 13th that, like, even though this one is not great, it's still better than some of the other ones. Like, I'm sure we will get into them later on, but once we get into like Jason X and Jason Takes Manhattan, it's it gets out there, man. But at least those actually have something to do with Jason.
It's interesting that you mentioned that viewpoint, because conversely, this is the first fully Voorhees property I've ever seen. The only other Jason property I had seen before this was Freddy versus Jason. That's the only other Friday the 13th lore I had ever watched in its entirety. So I'm coming at it from the completely just blank perspective of where I haven't seen 2 through 13, X, Jason Goes to Hell, that sort of thing. So I'm excited to see where our viewpoints will coalesce in this journey through these Raspberry Fields we go.
So before we get started, though, and we move into our next segment, I do want to ask you, since you watched Freddy vs. Jason and you've kind of know a little bit about the Friday the 13th lore, did you have any idea that this movie didn't have Jason in it?
The only reason that I knew that is because the Friday the 13th lore was completely explained to me at a lunch table when I was in the 5th grade by a kid named Travis. I just distinctly remember that day. And so I did know, yes, that Jason doesn't show up until the third movie, or the hockey mask doesn't show up until the third movie, rather. And Jason's in the second one, or at the end of the first one. Spoilers, but he told me that at that particular day. So I did know that, but that also comes with the territory of reviewing such a famous, iconic property. You tend to know the twists before they even happen. Like, I hadn't seen Psycho till I was 15, but the shower scene, for instance.
Right. And it's not necessarily the ending getting spoiled because, I mean, let's be honest, this movie is fairly old at this point. But it's more of the whole lore, and everybody, whenever anybody thinks of Friday the 13th, the first thing that comes to mind is Jason and that hockey mask and the machete and all of that. And it's pretty much all missing in this first movie. Like you said, Jason does kind of show up at the very end, but even that was shoehorned in there. We'll get into that later on. So I guess it's time we move into our next segment. Don't you think there, Kieran?
Well, yes, but before we get to that, I just wanted to compare. It's a bit of a Family Matters situation. I guess Jason Voorhees was the Urkel of this situation. because it was supposed to be a heartfelt family show about a police officer in Chicago and his family, and then this fucking nerd in a hockey mask shows up.